Hello Sensuals! Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Liana, Holistic Intimacy Coach. Here we talk about all things intimacy, intimacy growth, erotic transcendence, community Q&As, and any other ideas that I brainstorm from our comments, clients that I work with, and so on. You can also check out my About tab, where you can find a link to my website, where you have more programs to dive into and actually do practices. Today, I want to talk about what makes a difficult, intimate relationship. And I have a few notes. I'm going to read them from here. First of all, here's the structure. What is a difficult, intimate partnership? How do difficulties actually look like or might look like? The list is not exhaustive. You may have other situations out there that I didn't foresee or I didn't encounter through my work. And third, what can you do about it? Meaning, if you find yourself in a challenging, intimate partnership, what might be some solutions as to what is going on? So, let's take a dive. First of all, what is a difficult, intimate partnership? I wrote here, I made notes to make sure that I stay on point. So I wrote 3 main ideas. I'm gonna develop each one of them. First of all, I wrote down considerable difference in sexual or intimate or erotic development. And by considerable difference in the level of development, I meant a considerable difference in views around sexuality, around intimacy, around one's expression, around how the relationship might evolve or where they want to take the relationship to, intimately wise. Perspectives on sexuality in general, definitions on what is sexuality, what the role of it is, basically what they associate deep down in their core with this part of their lives. And last but not least, wisdom taken out of one's experiences, or also the capacity to extract wisdom from other experiences, meaning other people's experiences. So this is the capacity that some people might have when they hear a story shared or a discussion, let's say like in this video. They can extract knowledge based on the fact that they know themselves enough to do that, or they simply have a third sense, or not third, sixth sense, to feel into the situation and extract somehow the essence for themselves. That does come with experience, with maturing oneself into intimacy. Now, I want to put a caveat here. Experience doesn't necessarily mean that you go out there and you explore with God knows how many people. I'm talking about quality experience, the kind of experience that actually gives you wisdom. You extract knowledge, and knowledge that you put into constructive use. Okay? That's the best definition I can give to wisdom here. So with this, by the way, there's another caveat. This extreme difference in levels of development may not necessarily be a challenge or a difficulty in intimacy in the situation where somebody actually loves to initiate or teach partners or their partner stuff. Okay, if somebody gets really turned on by the fact of showing others, leading others, guiding others, opening paths for them, so basically being an initiator in sort of a way, then differences in development levels are not a problem. Okay? That also happens. That also happens. I'll just leave it at that. All right. So, what might a considerable difference in development look like? Well, somebody is actually more flexible, let's say, than the other, to try out new things, accessories, try out experiences on their body, or simply go out of their comfort zone. And these things don't necessarily mean that it's beneath them or it's scary, it's unnatural or not normal or I don't know, blamable and so on. So usually somebody with less experience might be fearful or might misinterpret things, or might simply not be in the habit, because this is also something that does come with experience and patience and time. They might not be in the habit of, when they hear something that seems kind of wild, to ask the simple question, okay, what does this mean to you? Usually when somebody's, I'm, for lack of a better word, inexperienced, I'm sorry if this triggers you, it's not my intention, I just don't have a better word for it right now. When somebody is less experienced, they might be really scared, or they might really see extreme or hear or understand or interpret extreme things into a proposal, which might not be so out there, but because they don't have that much reference to go on, they just get scared, and some people go ballistic also. It does happen. That's where the differences in levels, in development levels, can show up as a challenge or a difficulty, and that's what makes an intimate partnership difficult. The second thing that I wrote here, and what makes a difficult partnership, is considerable difference in needs. What might one need in intimacy? First of all, as with everything around intimacy, it's in arousal. If the two people are not compatible in arousal, then you don't have ignition, you kind of can't go further. So that's why compatibility in arousal is extremely important. If the two people are so different in their needs in order to get going, then it's a challenge to get turned on your own and then come turned on with somebody else. It's like against the purpose of sharing intimacy with somebody else, right? So that's where, if you want to translate at any time the incompatibility in intimacy, it's actually incompatibility in arousal. Because if you get this engine started together, by that time, basically you get going, so you have a lot of fuel to go on, or you have fire to burn and go on. But if you don't, then it doesn't go any further. And for this, a tool that I found extremely useful was the erotic blueprints. It's not something that I invented, but it's something that I came to understand through the certification that I had. Usually when I work with people, in case there's a problem with incompatibility or a kind of sense might be a problem in their relationship, I usually give them the test, and then I sit down and talk with them about all the blueprints and where they might be, where their partner might be, and what can be done in order to bring them to more mutual ground. But this, like the incompatibility, first of all, or different needs in arousal is super important. Another one that I wrote here is a difference in need of frequency. Okay, some people need sex daily. Some people in certain phases, I'm gonna take you to the emotional availability video again, we are cyclical. So we are also cyclical in our sexual needs. Sometimes we need sex more than once a day. It does happen to every one of us. Maybe it doesn't happen as often for everybody. Maybe when that happens, it doesn't last so long. So for some people, it can last, like, out of the top of my head, a week. For others, it might last months. For others, it might last years. The frequency also has a lot to do with your health. That's number one. Okay, the health of your body, especially your reproductive system, hormonal health also. A lot of our sexuality is influenced by hormones. Emotional well-being, obviously, if your heart, your inner states are just all over the place, messed up, crushed, and so on, usually you don't have sexual drive, or you just don't, your libido's low, basically. And you can also seek my low libido video, which I did recently. This might also shed some light for us. But frequency is also just the overall, the way somebody is. Some people have more fire in them than others. And it doesn't mean that somebody's sick or, I don't know, malfunctioning because they have more or less desire. It's just how much spunk somebody has in them, basically. So just keep in mind that frequency is also, like, if it's too incompatible between the partners, that usually turns out as a big challenge. Next to arousal, frequency is super big. What else did I put here? And also a difference in needs in terms of satiation, okay? What we need to feel satiated, okay? We might have mutual arousal. Great. We get turned on by the same things. We get the fire going together. Awesome. Hypothetically, whoever the we in a partnership is or are, we kind of have the same frequency, okay? We need it 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, and we're good, both of us. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the, let's say, duration or what happens when we get the fire going every time we want to, it doesn't mean that we also are compatible in what we need to happen afterwards. In order to feel satiated, some people might take longer, okay? It's like yawning. How the heck am I going to make a metaphor with sex and yawning? I don't know, but bear with me. So remember or think about how you yawn sometimes. Until you open the mouth and you somehow get the certain amount of tension in that yawn, like you yawn all through, and you feel it, like, okay, that's it, I really yawned it out, whatever it was. If you don't do that, you know that you're not complete and the yawn's gonna come back to haunt you until you yawn goddamn completely. Okay? It's what came to mind right now. For instance, I don't yawn because I'm bored. I usually yawn because I have something to take out of my body. Different association with yawning. It's in somatic experiencing, yawning is one way in which you actually solve stuff inside your body. I know it sounds like crying is one way, coughing, sneezing, yawning, moving. These are biological, bodily ways in which you solve stuff inside your body. Release tension, discharge stuff, and so on. Okay? Sexuality from that perspective is also, I said it in many videos, you can really transform stuff inside you, emotions, hormonal stuff, just through a good fuck. I'm just gonna call it as it is. So in order to feel satiated, some people might need, just like in the yawn, they might need a certain amount of time with that charge there, erotic charge, until something shifts in them and they're satiated. Some people might not be able to hold erotic charge for too long. And that's where satiation comes, and your capacity to hold erotic charge. That's super important. That's one of the key things that we work on. When we, sexological body workers, when we work with somebody, we actually find ways to clear up for people. Maybe they don't want to do any practical exercises in a session, but we got to find a way for our coachees to understand where they are, how much charge, erotic charge, they can carry in their body and they can hold, and how they release it, what happens, how they know that it was enough, and so on. So those are extremely important things. And yes, whenever your need for satiation is different from your partner's, that also qualifies as a difficulty and thus makes the intimate partnership a little more difficult. It's not important just to have compatibility in arousal and in frequency. You also need to have compatibility in the quality of your erotic expression. Okay, you need to feel that you get enough. You've fed, basically, erotically speaking, and it was good for you and your partner. That's one key ingredient. I'm not sure if you've ever thought about that, but it does exist. And then another way in which a difficult intimate partnership might look like is one of the partners may, for whatever reason, which I can't really encompass here, might have very special needs. And what I put here, very special needs in terms of more than their usual attention from their partner, more care, more patience from their partner, and this throughout extended periods of time, so months or maybe years. Why do I put it like that? Very special needs. So when I say very special, I mean either really above average. Like, we all have our special needs, obviously. Intimacy is delicate and it is special for most of us. But some people might require a whole lot more attention, care, patience, just a whole lot more. Imagine somebody needing like 2 hours just of foreplay, while the other partner might not even wrap their brain around the idea. Maybe somebody can't even conceive having sex with somebody for 2 hours, let alone just foreplay for 2 hours. If you're one of the people that actually can hold space for that, maybe you've trained, maybe you've developed in sexuality so much so that you have the understanding, at least mentally, or you actually embody it, then this might not be your situation. But for most people out there, this is not conceivable even. So they just can't. Some people get shocked just by the idea that you can have sex for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. It is possible. I'm not making things up here. I'm not going to go into details. I don't want to share from my life. I don't have the okay from any of my coaching clients to share anything here, so I'm not going to go there. But I'm going to tell you this is not a fairy tale. It can happen. And everybody, given the appropriate conditions, can actually have that. But unless you can't even conceive that, then you will put this in the category of very special needs and just not reasonable, not acceptable, not whatever, not normal. And you're just going to move forward. So when one of the partners in the relationship is there and the other one just, what the heck are you talking about? Basically, that's their mindset. That qualifies as a difficult, intimate partnership. Why do any of these show up? Well, my personal belief is that many people don't really consider talking about intimacy before becoming intimate with somebody. They just, the discussion doesn't go into quality stuff, and most people just don't have the idea. What could I talk with somebody new before I have sex with them? How much can I talk before they think that I'm crazy, insane, just overwhelming, or so on? So for most people today, high quality and really in-depth discussions about intimacy before we go intimate, it just doesn't happen. So that's, if we sit down and really talk with the other people, we kind of get a sense before we jump head first. Because that's what intimacy looks like. That's what we've been reading about in books. That's what we've been watching movies, mainstream movies, you know, romance and whatever. Nowadays, hardcore sex scenes in movies are no longer a problem. You know, it's not just in pornography, it's also there. So even when we go into a conscious sexuality community, whether it's BDSM, whether it's Tantra, whether it's just oriented towards the somatic, whether it's a women's community, whether it's a men's community or couples communities and so on, even then, talking too much about this topic because we can't hold it. We just don't have the capacity. It's overwhelming. That's why these situations, we might come across them and we might not even have an idea what's behind that. Also, it's not just the conversation between two people when they meet, but behind that lies we don't really we don't seek inside to find out, okay, what are we like? And that's not to judge, because everybody can decide to ask themselves, seek themselves, kind of dig in or dive in and find out what they're about, what they could hold. And they could do that through reading books, through taking online programs, through talking to somebody. Not necessarily a counselor or a coach or a therapist, just somebody else that they could open up to with this topic, and really trust that discussion will not be understood in a wrong way. So there's still still challenging to navigate this. So, and it's not to be blamed. That's what happens when we live in a culture that doesn't really foster constructive talk around a topic, but to the extreme it denies it, it shuns it. That's what, that's the classical case. You avoid something, you put it in the shadows, and no, it should work on its own, or it's dirty, or whatever. It's just, come on, you have something better to do. That stuff will just fester up until it becomes, like this monster that you don't know how to approach. It's embarrassing. It's you don't even know how to. You go like this. How the heck do I approach this? Basically, and that's what we also see, culturally speaking. That's why it's so difficult. All right, moving on to the next point. So number 2, how do difficulties actually look like? Okay, so I have my wolf here with me and he's snoring. I have no idea if you can hear him. I can. All right. So how do difficulties actually look like? I put here 4 ways. Number 1, one partner might be intimidated or overwhelmed by the other partner. So they might not initiate, first of all, intimacy. Or they might not request things or share things about themselves. Maybe because they don't know so much about themselves. Maybe because they are so intimidated that something in them just... When you're overwhelmed by somebody, it does the opposite of determine you to be better, to be more curious. Sometimes it can shut you down because it's just too much. So those things can actually happen. It's not that the person doesn't necessarily know themselves. Maybe they have some idea. Maybe in other circumstances they would have more confidence to search things about themselves, but overwhelming or being overwhelmed by somebody can actually put a cork in it somehow. Or basically somebody is so intimidated or overwhelmed that they might not want to try new things. And when I say new things here, when the other person, who let's say is more experienced, proposes something, the less experienced or less something person will understand it as extreme. And it's not that the proposal is extreme. It's just that their emotions, somehow intimidation and overwhelm, makes a proposal look actually more daunting than it is in reality. That stuff can happen, and that's all in the mindset and emotional mindfuck and emotional fuck, basically. And it's not in a sexy way. It's basically, that's how it messes up. So people can shut down because not necessarily it's the other person didn't say something extreme, but the one that is intimidated just interprets it or translates it as extreme, and they just shut down completely. They don't know what to say, so they don't want to do it. That's one way in which a difficult partnership can look like. Another way is the partner that somehow has more experience or feels more experienced can get cocky, impatient, condescending, might with the other partner. They might rush their partner. They might tend to criticize them, or simply overimpose their wishes, desires onto the other. This stuff can also happen when the two are somehow, it's not, so this is mostly about self-esteem, because you may have had 3 partners in your life or just one, but you may have had such an intimate track, background, whatever, that made you so fulfilled and build you up in a beautiful way. And even if you meet somebody who's had 300 partners behind them, you're still not intimidated, because you've lived richly and you've lived it with meaning, and you've built yourself in your intimate relationship. You grew. You didn't stagnate. You didn't acquire more insecurities and so on. In many relationships, sadly, long-term, short-term, doesn't matter, because the two people don't really have an idea how to actually honor the other person and honor themselves, we kind of bring people down. Or though we don't want to, we allow ourselves to be brought down. That's a lot of, negative patterns around intimacy and intimate relationships. They're out there, okay? Those are times that we go through. So yeah, that's one explanation. And because somebody feels that they're more cocky and the other person feels that they're a little less experienced, this kind of dynamic forms, and this is one way in which a difficult partnership can manifest itself. Okay. Another way in which a difficult partnership might look like is still from the person that feels that they're more knowledgeable or savvy in the relationship. They might see the other person as so inexperienced that actually it's a turnoff for them. So they don't necessarily condescend, they don't judge, they don't overimpose or anything. But to the other extreme, they kind of withdraw, because the lack of confidence or lack of something that they perceive from the other person is a turnoff. It does happen. Some people are not turned on to be initiators or guides or anything else for their partners. Some people just want relationships to be on somewhat the same level. I'm not sure if perfect match, like perfect equality between people can exist here. I'm not sure if somebody should strive for that. We do have our individuality, especially in intimacy. So, but in terms of confidence, I'm not sure if somebody can measure confidence in intimacy and be precise like to the decimal. So that's why I'm saying when the difference is perceived so large, some people can actually just withdraw. That's also something that it can be a difficulty. Those people are not arrogant, they just see that somebody there is struggling, and that struggle for them is not a turn on. That doesn't mean that they don't love or cherish their partner, they're just not sexually or erotically turned on by that. Okay, and the fourth way in which difficulty can manifest itself here, the one that I saw, there might be others, the reality here is that either insecure partners or arrogant partners are actually not arousing. Okay, so the truth of the situation is that for most of us, when we see somebody that is struggling too much or that is showing off too much, it's a turn off. The only caveat here, as it is with those who are not afraid of these differences because they like to initiate, in this situation, when you have a partner that is either too arrogant or too insecure, so the extremes, and you're attracted, turned on by that, is when you actually have some stuff to work on. You're working on something, usually related to self-esteem, but you can translate it in any other way. So until you learn that, you actually stay, you're drawn to this relationship because there's something there that you actually need to learn. And it is true that through our erotic life, it is the best growth energy out there. Sexuality, yeah. It's our creative force also, life force. We are born through it, and one way in which we know we're alive is that we're able to be turned on by life, by situations, by challenges. That excitement, okay, is also is an expression of our sexual energy. Even though we're not physically aroused, the excitement that we feel is also a turn on. And it's an expression of that. So when we're turned on by stuff that are to one extreme or the other, we're working on things, whether it's our self-esteem, let's say we're attracted to highly arrogant people, or if we are attracted to highly insecure people, then we might be working on respecting others, leaving others, room for growth also, not saving others, not being teachers for others, and so on. So that is one, unless you have to work with that, usually you're not turned on by somebody who is too intimidated, like extremely intimidated, or extremely arrogant, cocky, condescending, and so on. That's, I call it as I see it. Okay, and last, what can you do about it? So I wrote here 4 main things. You might come up with other ways depending on your particular situation. Whenever you seek to work with somebody, or when you start to simply do inner contemplation, you take a book and you start to reflect on yourself, you might find more things to do than what I give you here. But number 1, and actually put it down as 0, do you want to do something about it? The reason this question is there is because many people can't really see the challenges as I describe them here. Okay, a challenging intimate relationship, as I see it, with the eyes of a coach, other people might not consider that. So first of all, do you want to do something about it? Meaning, do you see that there is a challenge? And also, do you choose to do something about it? It's also valid to ask this because many people, even when they're aware that they need to work on something, the actual choice or decision and commitment to do the work is a whole different ballgame. A lot of people are starting to come up to the realization, okay, I have some blockages here, but I don't feel like working on them. I don't even want to think about them. I hear, especially women, whenever I go out and do networking and I talk about my work, some women actually use this phrase. Yeah, I'm also blocked in my sexuality, but I don't want to work on it right now. So that's why this question is here, and it makes complete sense. Do you want to work on it? The answer can be anything. There's no judgment. Like, there's a time, or maybe never. That's also true. There is a time when you work on this, or maybe you never want to work on this. Totally valid. Maybe your life is completely about something else, and you want to keep whatever level or stuff you have going on right now, you want to keep that for life, and that's it. Your decision. I mean, it's your life. That's why I put it here, and it's important for you to realize. Okay, the number 2 thing that I put here is, let's say that you want to work on it, but somehow you can't muster up the energy. It takes a lot of stamina, strength, life energy, time, resources to do this work, as with anything. So maybe one situation is where you can't, for whatever reason. You don't have the time, the energy, the money, the patience, the nerves. Go to the emotional availability video, okay? It's going to explain a lot of things for you. So in that situation, you might choose to stay in that dynamic. And usually this happens until either something breaks or cracks in the relationship, so something threatening comes along, or until some other external event happens and it triggers you. You might stand to lose a relationship that is extremely important for you, or maybe you already lose it. And in the aftermath of that loss, man, you start to do self-work. It's possible, a lot of people's life stories go down that path. I don't judge it. I just see it as it is. I don't push you to do anything, and you do it your own way. It's just one situation. The third thing that I wrote here is that you can actually, no matter at which point, you can seek external help, meaning somebody that is either somebody that you trust, but that's a very delicate thing, because whenever you have a challenge, you kind of have to get into some intimate details. Not all, but some. So if it's somebody in your close circle, it might be delicate, but still, depending on the amount of trust that you have in somebody, you can seek external help in the shape of a relative or somebody else in your social circle that you trust so much that you could go with your intimate life with. Or you might actually go seek somebody that is doing this work and they're bound by the client practitioner confidentiality. And if they're good at what they do, they're not going to start talking around, okay? Unless they have your approval to share tidbits of your story just to let others know this is what you can do. But otherwise, they are bound by client practitioner confidentiality. And the point of seeking help is, first of all, to strengthen you. Okay, you work on your resources, inner resources, and the idea here is that you become capable to actually take a decision at a certain point. Transform something in your intimate life. Talk to your partner. Take whatever other decision you want. But this is, ideally, this is where external help will take you to. External help is not somebody that tells you, do this, this, and this. Nobody can live your life for you, especially your intimate life, and I hope that seeking advice from somebody is the worst thing to do. They can't give advice. The best help that you can get is to strengthen yourself so that you can call your shots for your intimate life. Pure and simple. Okay? And the last thing that I wrote here is, and this is the ideal one, whenever you realize that you have something challenging, so you're in a difficult intimate partnership, you talk to your partner and you both decide and actually stick to your decision to transform something. Whatever, and like the sea of possibilities here it's like an ocean of possibilities. Maybe you decide that one goes for personal growth while the other goes for therapy. Maybe you decide that one person helps the other to get more confidence, or maybe you decide to do various practices just for the other's self-esteem. Yes, this can happen. Your intimate life doesn't necessarily have to be just what you've seen in movies or I don't know where else. It can also be for practices. You can't do them with your partner. I know, it's like complete rewiring of what you know, like what your definition is of sexual expression. Totally possible. Or any other decision. Okay, so there are many things that can be done here, and the limit is the one that is imposed by you, consciously or not, by any limitations that you might have in your life, and those are totally human. So yeah, but that's the ideal, the fourth one, where you talk to your partner and you both decide that you want to take action. It's rare, but it does happen. And usually it gives the best results if you take this kind of approach early on. Not in the aftermath of a breakup, not when you're on the brink of a breakup and you can feel it. No. So that's my view on what an intimate or a difficult intimate partnership is. It's a coaching perspective. I'm very, very curious what your opinion is. If you resonated with some of the things that I shared here, if you see other things that I could not see, okay, everything that I shared here, though I don't give any details from my life or from my coaching clients, it's based on my practice. And it's based also on discussions that I've had while I was getting certified, and then simply sharing knowledge with peers. That's the beauty of it. So yeah, that's it. I know I promised a different video, so the video with the comparison between sexological body worker and somatic experiencing practitioner is coming up. Bear with me, I had to give you this one. I realized this topic today and I told myself, okay, I'm doing this now.